Hey there, beautiful souls. It's your girl, Jo, and I'm here to invite you to a podcast experience like no other. Welcome to Unapologetically Anxious Me, Confessions of a Haitian Girl, where we dive deep into the raw, unfiltered truth about life, love, and everything in between. From mental health struggles to the social issues that impact our lives, we are going there. We're breaking down the barriers and shedding light on the things that society often sweeps under the rug. Because our stories deserve to be told, and I believe we all have something to teach one another if only we make the time to listen. So my loves, come chill with your girl and celebrate being unapologetically you. On this episode, we're being graced with the presence of the amazing ALYSSA LJUB from season 4 of Netflix, The Circle. Trust me, babes, you don't want to miss this one. Grab yourself a drink and get comfortable.
ALYSSA LJUB on all of my social platforms. I'm an intimacy educator, which is the Instagram safe way to say sex educator, and a relationship coach. And I was on season 4 of a Netflix show called The Circle, where I came on with my vulva pillow and everything. I said vagina a million times. My dad loved it. And yeah, so now I just try and bring as much information to my social spaces as I possibly can, because I think it's important to have accurate, free, accessible sex education. And yeah, I think that's my spiel.
I think that's so awesome. I'm so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have so much to talk about. I had barely begun recording and I was already getting into conversation with you. So I was just okay, let's start this because I'm too excited. First of all, of course, everyone probably recognizes you from The Circle on Netflix. And so I think we want to go ahead and start from there. Everybody know that show from pandemic times, and it kind of became this big hit. It's hosted by the incredible comedian Michelle Buteau, and they get basically a bunch of everyday people who are supposed to be influencers in their own rights, who can go as themselves or catfish, and they put them in these different apartments, and they compete to win a cash prize at the end of 6 weeks, or
we're only filming for 2 weeks. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Oh wow.
It feels like a lifetime. And it reminds me of I don't know if you've ever watched any of the Bachelor or Bachelorette franchise stuff. So you know how they're what feels like 2 weeks in and they're I'm really falling in love. And it's so funny when you're watching that because you're this is so silly. How's that possible? Yeah. But when we were filming The Circle, we all got to the end and we literally knew each other only through screens, only through short conversations via text.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-week span. And when we got to the end of it, they're friendships for life. You just yeah, it's a really fun experience. I had such a good time.
How that can happen though, especially when you're in an intimate bubble and you're not surrounded by anybody else who and how is that once you're actually into that space? What is it like once you're on set and filming? Do you see each other, or is it really just all blocked out like we think it is?
We don't see any of the other contestants at all until you get blocked and you go and visit somebody, or that finale dinner, or the actual finale itself. That's the only time we see anybody. And they were filming the show for years in England. So not only are you separated from your other castmates, you also have none of your friends, none of your family. Your environment is completely different. And because of COVID too, they held us there for a month per season. And so you're in England for a month by yourself, and they give you a chaperone, and this chaperone is around your age, and they live with you and they help you, get all your groceries and whatever you need. And I had a really wonderful chaperone, so I had a really great friendship with her, and I still do. And that was so helpful. But they take your phone away. They give you a production phone, and it's a crappy Samsung Galaxy from 2016. It's so bad. And it's completely locked except for YouTube. You can watch some YouTube videos. And you can put 5 contacts in there, and then and you're isolated aside from that. So There are people who will go on to shows like this and have like literally no idea what's happening in the world, and they'll come out, and like this happened with Big Brother, like when the pandemic happened and like it got progressively bad, and there are people in the Big Brother house and they had no idea until they got out, like stuff
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, it's crazy how shows like that work. It is funny though, because I'm a pretty like introverted person. Like I love to spend time by myself. Like the best part of the dating experience for me is you literally have to be more fun to hang out with than when I'm just by myself. And that's so challenging. Like best of luck, because I love to be alone.
Like I really enjoy my own
uh,
company.
the most. I enjoy my own company the most. And then but we had people talk, you have a producer talking to you from the very beginning to the very end of the day, and we got one day off in the filming cycle, and that day my request was like, please no one talk to me, because I'm so tired of talking. It was so much. So you are isolated from all the contestants, you're isolated from your friends and your family, but my God, are you talking every second of the day?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you actually have people like in the apartment with you?
No one, excuse me, no one's in the apartment. They have a speaker in the room, and they call that producer, yeah, your voice of God, because that's, you never see them.
Oh, so
You,
that is weird.
yeah, you only hear them. And one of my producers, my daytime producer, was this guy named Dan, and I have no idea what this man looks like, but I would just like flirt with him relentlessly because I had nothing better to do.
Hey.
Yeah, it's like one of the things that they do, especially for any filming that happens in the UK specifically, they're very serious about your well-being. So
Yeah.
they'll ask you like everything that you ate in a day. So they'll be like, oh, what did you have for breakfast? What did you have for lunch? And they're asking because they're going to like write it all down and make sure everyone's eating and that they're healthy and whatever. But like I thought genuinely that he was like just like interested in what I was eating.
Like, okay.
So he was like, what are you eating? And I was like, well, it's just like some eggs. And I just like cooked it in some tomato sauce. Like, it's stupid. So silly. It was so silly.
Like he's like, I'm just doing my job. This is not a date.
Yeah, he's literally like, cool, okay, like moving on. But yeah, it was so thankfully the producers are great too. Like they're so wonderful. And so it's not as isolating as it seems, but you definitely don't see any of the contestants. They're so serious about that.
I think probably though going into it with that mentality though probably kept you from going crazy
Yeah.
because you're probably like in a little bit of like a situation in your head and you're like, oh yeah, like I'm not in some weird box where someone's watching me.
Right.
Like this is a relationship. It's just strange.
Yeah. Exactly. Dan and I were dating for
We're
those
like,
2 weeks I was in there.
involved. Like this is totally serious.
Exactly. Oh man. One day he's gonna listen to like one of the interviews I did where I talk about him. He's gonna be like, gonna file a restraining order. Be like, this lady is crazy.
She's crazy. She's nuts.
Exactly. If he
Like
didn't
that was
already
not
know.
what I meant by eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like if he didn't already know from spending all the time with me and during when we were filming, but he was great. I loved him.
Oh my goodness. So what has changed since the show?
Everything. Like I at the time I was an assistant to a sex coach, which was basically the woman that I was working for during the pandemic wanted to move her entire business to be online. So like she wanted to be able to have her clients on Zoom calls and group classes and build a website and build social media. And like she was approaching 50 at the time. So like this was all stuff that she was learning. Like it was all stuff she was learning on the fly. So she wanted an assistant to help her get all that stuff on board. So that's what I was doing. A lot of people are like, what does that mean? Well, I was helping her move all of this class material online, which also meant that I got to read all the class material and be part of the group classes and learn all of this really amazing stuff. And so when the show happened, I knew that that was going to be my next step because I was like mind blown by everything she was saying. I was like, I can't believe at the time I was 27. And I was like, I can't believe I'm 27 years old and I'm just learning the difference between a vulva and a vagina. How is this possible? Like, how is this possible? But no, no one's teaching you. So that was like a big learning moment for me. And then when I got on the show, I knew that I knew what the show wanted to portray me as, but it was really important that when I stepped off of it, that I stayed true to wanting to educate people and having my like main mission be to to help. And so since then, I've been very lucky to be able to build some part of my like I do a lot of like brand collaborations to keep everything afloat until my coaching certification is done, because I want to be very careful and ethical about the way I go about that.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm very lucky that I'm able to do that as a result of the show, so that I can focus on studying, and then when the time is right, open up coaching. And yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is like such a tremendous privilege and blessing, and I'm so lucky that that's how that all worked out.
Now on the show, I think, and I'm not sure if it's because you were planning on explaining this later on, more about like how you came to be in the like sex world, or like why that was even an interest for you. So,
Mhm.
but like I remember like in when you did come up, you just were kind of a little coy about it. So of course I'm gonna have to dig here. Like, I mean, now I know you were, of course, working for someone where that became an interest, and so you definitely took on that, like, personal interest into it. But like, was there something along the way before that, growing up? Like, have you always been like a sexual person, or like, has that always been a side to you that it always like drew you to that, those conversations?
Well, I grew up in like a Roman Catholic home. My parents are the first generation born here, so they were raised by immigrant parents. And so like they didn't have conversations about sex or sexuality with their parents. So my parents didn't have those conversations with me either. And so as I was growing up, I felt like I was really trying to figure out like I literally was just doing this TikTok earlier today about how when people talk about virginity, they add so much moral value to that, when in reality everyone's definition of virginity is different and there's no biological definition for it. So it's something that we made up to control people and their actions. And so I think growing up in a home that was, we weren't like super religious, but religious enough that like I felt like there was a lot of moral and ethical value tied to sexuality, but also being a person who like liked to explore. Like I didn't do anything like crazy, or I didn't like lose my virginity when I was like 11. Like like I did everything sort of like everyone else did.
Not that
But
that even has to be like
no,
the
like
ground for anyone going into
no,
it. Like,
anybody, if you're safe and consensual and it's like whatever, it's all
yeah.
fine. Um, but more to say, like I had a very conventional like sexual experience, I think. And then when I was in college, I was sexually assaulted, and I didn't even realize that that's what it was until years later. So like this was an experience that at the time I felt so much shame. I felt like it was my fault. And I like when I think back on it, like the whole situation was I was with a friend, and I she was a really bad influence. Of course these are my actions, but I was sort of like in this whole cloud of wanting to do everything that she was doing, and I drank quite literally 2 liters of wine, 2 liters of wine, like that. I don't even know how I didn't end up in the hospital. um she invited like some guy to my apartment, and his friend ended up being this person who took advantage of the situation. And I remember thinking like it was my fault because I was so drunk and I let this person into my home. And then as I got older and I started to really like think about it, I was like, I don't even know that person's name. Like I literally don't know this person's name. I don't remember any of it. And so that was a big learning experience for me, because it ended up being something where when I really thought about the way I considered myself
Mhm.
as like a sexual being, that shame is ingrained in so much of it for me. And it prevented me from having the open, safe relationships that I wanted to. Like I don't think that I was able to freely explore relationships in like a healthy, balanced way, because I just was coming at it all feeling this like shame from that experience. And then also growing up in like a Catholic home, and that just sort of being the MO at the time. And so that was kind of the background of it. I felt like all of that laddered up to this moment where I'm meeting this woman who is like so sexually liberated. She's also like, she was closer to my mom's age than mine. And she's just talking about everything so freely and, you know, talking about how sexuality is our right as human beings. Like it is our right as human beings, as women, as however you identify, to have these sexual experiences that are safe and fun and pleasurable. Like I remember sex education is literally when you're in school and you do sex education, it's preventative. It's how to
Right.
not get STIs, how to not get pregnant. Yeah. It's abstinence. And we know that abstinence doesn't work. We know that when you teach kids the correct comprehensive sex education, they have sex later in life and
Mhm.
they are a lot less likely to have pregnancies, especially teen pregnancies, drastically go down when there's comprehensive sex education. And that preventative stuff is so important. It's so important. But you don't learn about pleasure literally at all unless you really go out of your way and seek it out.
Mhm.
And um and I think it's just because we tie that like shame and moral and ethical value to it.
Right.
And it makes it really hard for people to talk about. Same thing with like money and religion and all that kind of stuff. It's you when you tie this really intense moral value to something, it is so hard to have open conversations about. But when you are suddenly you're with this person who neutralizes all of it and makes it so normal. And this woman is having these conversations with other women about their labia, and I'm standing
Yeah.
there and I'm like, I've never been exposed to anything like this, and it was
Yeah.
so empowering. And I was so lucky to be able to be watching these women, specifically in these group classes, that were their lives were like quite literally their lives and their relationships and their marriages are changing in front of me over like 8 weeks. And I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I can't believe that like I just stumbled into this.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a really powerful experience for me.
That's incredible. And that's so powerful. I really relate to a lot of your story and just your journey there. I definitely come from a really religious background, so I can see how that can like intensify your curiosity, even going through your own personal like sexual assault and trying to like take your power back and like, really learning about your own body. And I think that's really incredible to now wanting to like educate others to like wanting to do that themselves. Like, what do you think that you bring to the table, like, as a sex educator that makes you different in that industry or just in this lane?
I think that is actually like one of my biggest struggles right now, because I always feel like there are all these wonderful people who have been in the sex education space for so much longer than me. And, you
Mhm.
know, I was sort of handed this platform. And so I struggle a lot with that because it's important to me that people who have put the time and the energy to build this industry that I just sort of like was able to walk into,
Mhm.
um, that they're still their platforms are elevated. So that being said, I think that I have a good sense of how to neutralize those types of things for people, similar to the way that my boss did. And I've always kind of known that without knowing that, because I was always the friend that my friends talked to me about all of their sexual experiences with. Like I know things about my friends' buttholes that no one should know. Like, why do I know this? But it's because I just will I never held any judgment for anybody. And so I was always a safe space for people to talk to about that kind of thing. And it's funny because a lot of the my follower demographic is from like 18, the majority from 18 to like 35. The
Mhm.
majority of the messages I get though are from people who are around 18 or younger. And so I think, yeah, I think that's interesting because I think that there's sort of like a big sister energy that I end up bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Um and I appreciate and really cherish those relationships, and that they really like feel comfortable sharing that information with me. I also get a lot more messages from men than I do from women in like the 20s and up range. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I think there's something, I don't know, maybe it's my face. There's something about about the way that I'm
Well,
communicating things.
it's interesting because my friend and I, we were just having this conversation the other day because she's a big fan of yours and she's been following you since the circle as well.
Mhm.
And I think that Actually, I was really surprised when we spoke before we began recording. That's why I was so surprised when you're like, "No, I'm a millennial too,"
Oh yeah.
and I was like,
Hmm.
"Wait, what?" Because one of the things we both relate to you, but she's Gen Z, I'm millennial, and you're kind of like smack dab in the middle of us, I feel.
Yeah.
But like you do see things, I think you make things very comfortable, and you make things very comfortable for people to talk about. You're very approachable in the way that you um explain things sexually. And I've seen so many different people in this space just handle it a lot differently. And one of the things the best way I could come up with it to describe it was like, you're like the kindergarten teacher of
Yeah.
sex education. It's like,
Yeah. That's honestly like I think that in the past, especially in the past couple months, for whatever reason, well, actually, I've been really trying to think about like what my next steps are going to be to make sure
yeah,
that I stay impactful and valuable to people. I realized that I think my strength is meeting people where they're at.
yeah.
And like there are people who are like experts in bondage and kink and whatever, and that's not me. I don't have that personal experience. I don't have that professional experience, and they are so good at it, and I'm just not going to impede on that space. But where I can help is for the people who are like their sex life is super vanilla and they love it and they don't care and they just want to know like how can I do like vanilla with sprinkles. Like I don't need to like I don't need to like reinvent the wheel, but maybe like figure out a way to make it a little spicier or whatever. And there's a really wonderful sex educator. Her name's Shan Boodram, and if you no one follows,
I love her. That
I'm
is
obsessed
like
with
my
her.
girl. Like,
I'm obsessed with her.
I'm
She
obsessed too.
Oh my God. So I'm extremely literally every time we have these meetings, I don't know why I'm there. I'm extremely lucky to be in a mentorship program with her. And it please every I thought it was going to be a group of like 100 people. I go in there, it's like 20. I'm like, what am I doing here?
Oh my
What
God.
is it? So and there's so many oh my God. There's so many wonderful sex educators in that group. And one of the things that she said was as she was building her platform, her stance on it was like taking medicine with a spoonful of sugar.
Mhm.
You're still going to get the medicine, but it's going to be super sugar coated. And that works for her. And I think that like I have a similar type of feel where I don't want to do like the call her daddy thing. It ends up feeling vulgar for people who are not comfortable with it. And then at that point, it's like, who are you helping,
You make it
really?
very digestible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, like meeting people where they're at a much more like approachable entry level
Mhm.
space.
Now I know that this industry, historically, has always been very heterosexual focused,
Hmm.
very penis focused.
Yes.
How do you think you're changing that, especially in terms of like bringing the conversation in for the trans community, the queer community, and bringing them to the table and prioritizing their sexual intimacy and their sexual um, happiness?
So I think for the trans and queer community, it's one of those spaces where it's really important to platform the people who are trans and queer and can speak from their life experience and also from professional experience. So I like to be inclusive. Like I think it's important to use words like vulva owner and penis owner because not everybody who has those parts are identifying that way. And that's important. It is important, and I don't care what anyone has to say about that. Pronouns are not hard to figure out. I just can't. Every time I hear that argument, I'm like, I just can't. I can't deal with it. I try to be very patient, but it's so hard. Um, so I think it's important to platform those people because ultimately, like, I am a white girl. Like, I don't like my experience is only what I've been able to like branch out into,
Mhm.
and so it's so important that these other people have the space and the platform to talk about things so that the audience also feels seen and heard by their own community. And that's tremendously important. The other part of it that's interesting is a lot of the research that we have is done Is it what? Sorry.
Very outdated, probably.
You know what? Some of it's getting better, but it's a lot of men and women in heterosexual relationships, and that's what they're studying. And a lot of the information that we have is not all of it, but a lot of it is survey based, which means, excuse me, you are relying on people to tell you the truth. And that's also really tough because when you're growing up in an environment where you're constantly being told that as in quotes, as a woman, you should be saving yourself for marriage, or and if you're having sex before that, you are a lower value woman, which I can't with that either. And when you're being told that, and then someone is asking you to volunteer this information, the likelihood of you accurately doing that is just not really going to be there. You can do your best, but like I think that type of information can only get you so far. And more recently, I've seen information that at the very least prioritizes women of all kinds. Actually, the beginning of gynecological research was done on Black women who were they were forced
Right.
into that space.
Mhm.
And so you're doing all this gynecological research on people who have not volunteered. And that information alone like should literally all be set on fire or trashed. Like it's just like I can't imagine when our bodies have such significant physical reactions to stress. And so when you're putting these women through life-threatening stress and then you're going to try and like use that
How
information.
accurate was that information? Yeah.
Yeah, aside from it being an actual atrocious thing to do to a human being, like how accurate could that information possibly be? And
Also, if you think about it, at the time, they genuinely didn't feel that those women felt pain. So they
right,
continuing these same experiments over and over again.
right, with a lot of the time without painkillers of any kind. Like
Yeah.
it's that whole it's horrifying. More recently, they've been a little bit better, but it's only in the past like 30 years that it's been a requirement to include women on any medical research for like medicines and things. So for there's a test that they do for the potential of having a heart attack.
Mhm.
That test was done on men only. And the symptoms of a potential heart attack for women are completely different.
Yeah.
So we are using that same test on women and it's threatening the lives of women as a result. And so like in general, the research is just like it's just not weighted correctly. It never has been. And so it's really hard to then come into these spaces and want to talk about being, super inclusive about everybody and also wanting to be as accurate as you possibly can. And so that's where like a lot of the times those like phrases like vulva owner and penis owner are important because if you're talking about biologically what's happening, that's where the terminology has to be. And even so, if you are trans and you are experiencing hormonal changes physically, or you've gone any sort of like surgical procedure,
Mhm.
that also changes what the information looks like for you. So I really hope that the information in the next like 10 years it gets drastically better because we deserve it. Like we deserve to know all of this information and feel like we're being advocated in all of these spaces because there's information to advocate for. So that was a very long-winded way to answer that question.
No, I appreciate that. Just a follow up to that, because you did mention earlier that you do get a surprisingly amount of questions from even younger people,
Mhm.
under 18. So, what what advice do you have for people or younger people within the trans and queer community who are experiencing a lack of access to information and resources, or who don't have the ability to speak to family members or parents with that much ease? Like, what can they do within their areas to find out more information about their sexual health and what they can do for pleasure and all these?
Mhm. I would say that your first step would be to find support that can come in like the form of a therapist. There are lots of ways to like have affordable therapy options that are specifically for the queer community. And I don't remember them off the top of my head, but if you go to my Instagram, and I promise this is not a plug to get you to go to my Instagram, but if you go to my Instagram,
Good handle.
it's at Alyssa, ALYSSA LJUB. There's a highlight that says mental health. And if you click on that, there's one that is specifically for affordable queer community resources.
Mhm.
So I would start there. It's also really important to try and find doctors that specifically represent the queer community. Like I know that there are some, and I'm very lucky, I live very close to New York City, but
Right.
I know that there are some in New York City who's like, I can't remember what the guy's name is, but people literally call him like the gay doctor because he just has enough research and comfort level with other queer folks, and so he has a lot of queer clients, and so a lot of my friends have the same doctor because he's just so well known in the local community.
Mhm.
But any way that you can do that, even if it's like telehealth, find a doctor who is going to allow you to continue to advocate for yourself, so that when you have questions, they will actually answer them and not dismiss you. Like just never take no for an answer in circumstances like that. Never take like the dismissal of you are, it's just your for vulva owners, it's your period, don't worry, like that sort of stuff. Like don't just
Yeah.
never take, if you know something is wrong, follow through on it.
Right.
In terms of information, like things related to like sexuality and things like that,
Mhm.
I would say to again look for those resources by like people who are certified. So certifications you can look for are the National Coalition for Sexual Health, NCSH, or ASECT, which is the American Association of Sexuality Counselors, Educators, and Therapists. ASECT.org has like a whole like a search engine, and you can look for people in like all of these different specific areas. You can look for counselors, you can look whatever. And so that's a really good resource too. Look for people who have certifications, because there's going to be a lot of like just random, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this, poop that's just flying around. And
That's
you just,
okay.
and you just like don't know who's telling the truth and who's actually in your corner and wants to create that safe space for you. There's someone named Dan Savage. He has a podcast that's really wonderful, and he is queer and is also I think he's a therapist. He's a sex educator, and I know he's a doctor, and I think he's a therapist, not like a clinical doctor.
Okay.
Um, but he has amazing resources. His podcast is amazing. It's called the Savage Lovecast. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out too. And he writes a lot of really great articles. So like if you're ever looking for information and you see it's an article written by Dan Savage, you're in a great place.
Awesome. So, what is next for you in terms of like your career? Like, what is the ultimate goal for what Alyssa wants to do?
So this is like, I've been trying to figure this out. My 30th birthday was in October, and it was like a whole, I had like I thought I was fine until like a couple days before, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like
We
it was
all have
very,
that meltdown at 30.
oh my God, it was very dramatic of me. I don't know. So it's like the $1 million question, what my next step is going to be. I think, like we were saying before, I'm good at the like meeting people where they're at and making information really digestible. And so I would like to be able to have more like organized and formal, sounds not fun, but formal like course type of information. And I think it's important for people who are like, you know, around 18, between 16 and like 18, and that younger age group, for them to have the correct information is so important. And it's also important for parents to know how to speak to their children um about sexuality for all types of people. Like I think, we have a new generation of parents who are raising a new generation of kids who are going to be comfortable saying that they're non-binary or they're trans or they're queer a lot earlier. And this generation of parents, which is like us, basically the millennials,
Yep.
we were most likely not given those tools from our parents. And so I think it's important to find a way to give those tools to them. And I think in general, like my mission is to be able to find ways to give people tools to just be able to enjoy their sexual lives, find the pleasure in them, find ways to unravel the shame that we experience. That is just so like soul crushing to see, even in the conversations I have back and forth with people. And finding ways to do that at the lowest cost humanly possible, because I know a lot of sex educators in this space, and they're absolutely worth the amount of money that they're asking for, but they're doing these like workshops that are $1,000, and that's great. And I think that that's made for people who can afford that. Like, absolutely, if you have $1,000 to spend on sexual information and health, by all means, that is a great use of your money. But most people don't have those kinds of funds, and they deserve to also feel like the liberation and the freedom of enjoying their sexuality again. So I'm figuring out what that is in like a very tangible sense. I'm like looking at I have like Post-its and like cards all over the place. I can't even see that. Trying to figure out what my next step is going to be in like more of a tangible sense. But my overall mission is to just create resources that are affordable and accurate for as many types of people as I feasibly can.
And I think that's amazing. I think that it's great that you're still growing and you're still figuring it out. And I love that you're taking us along on your journey
Yes.
social media. So I will continue following that. Are you still you're still doing the podcast, of course, right?
Yes. So I still have my podcast. It's called Alyssa Explains It All. And I'm actually in the process of revamping that a little bit too. So come next year, it'll be a little bit different in a good way. I think it just needs like a little more structure. So that'll be coming next year. But if you scroll back in the conversations that I've had over the past year, there's a lot of really good ones, like conversations with sex therapists. Like one of my favorite things that we did was interview a whole bunch of people who work in the adult entertainment industry. So people who are like porn stars or cam girls or whatever, and hearing their like lived experiences was I love, they're such wonderful, hilarious people. By all means, those are great.
That's
If you listen to the show, there's lots of interviews with me and John, and Brew. We did one with Brew. Yeah.
So, everybody who knows, well, you don't know John, but Mama Carol on the show on season 4 of The Circle is actually John.
Yes.
And John is now your fiance, correct?
No, just boyfriend.
Boyfriend. Okay.
He's still baby. He turns 27 in like 2 months. He's
Oh,
baby.
okay. Yeah. So you guys, so how did that all happen? Like,
Well, we actually can all thank Yu Ling for that, because it was kind of her accidental doing. So, um, the three of us, because we all live in like the New York area, we would go like hang out in the city all the time in between the show finishing filming and then when we actually aired the show. So we had like 8 months in between, and we couldn't tell anybody like about our experience and whatever. And so we would just hang out with each other all the time. And there was one night where Yuling was supposed to come out with us, and last minute she couldn't make it. So John was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll pick a different restaurant that's closer to your office, because we were going to go, whatever, kind of out of the way. And he picked this place that was like a Greek restaurant that at the time I was working at a corporate job on the, like, it was like Midtown Manhattan, like right by Saks Fifth Avenue, to give you reference of what this area was like. So he picks this restaurant, and it's like gorgeous date vibes, white flowers everywhere, like white tablecloth. And we get there and we're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And he's literally wearing like a hoodie. Like this was like not what we thought it was going to be. And I think like partially because this whole thing was so funny and absurd, we were just like, we like really leaned into it. So we were having like lots of drinks and hanging out. And then after that, we left and went to, this was like right around Christmas time, 2 years ago now. Geez. And so we went to like Bryant Park. We got drinks there. We hung out for a little while. And I flirted with him a little bit, but he would not flirt back with me. And later he said it was because he's like, you're so much older than me that I just thought like, there's no way she's flirting with me. There's no way. And he just like didn't think that that was real, which is very funny. And then after that, we like kind of, it was sort of on and off, I think, because we were both really nervous about getting into something and then the show coming out. And it was just like a lot.
Yeah.
And so it took a little while before it like actually became a thing, but that was where it all kind of started. It was like kind of an accidental date.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cute.
Yeah, it was really cute. It was really cute. And he needed some, it was funny because the biggest like reason why it took so long from we started dating in like June a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And so like the months and months in between was just him thinking that he like couldn't do it. He was just like had it in his head that he's like, I'm not old enough. I can't. He would say something like, I can't give you what you need. I'm like, what is that? What do you think that I need?
That I need.
If I'm telling that you are, I'm confused. It was just, so he needed like a little time, I think, to like understand the situation and calm down. And it's been really lovely since then. It's been a year and a half now.
Cool. So what's the real Mama Carol like?
Oh my God.
Was he
Mama
anything
Carol.
like his mom?
Well, what's the real Mama Carol like? John or John's mom? Like
Carol?
actual Carol. Okay, so actual Carol is hilarious. She is, first of all, very small. Like she's a very short lady. She is like very much New Jersey Italian mom vibes. Like she bakes all the time, and she bakes all the time, but is also like the like 90s mom that like when she's gonna eat food, she eats like a iceberg salad with like with like 3 tomatoes. I'm like, Miss Carol, we gotta be eating more than this. But then she'll like she balances it out because she'll bake. And she's just so warm, like such a warm, lovely, lovely person. And she is really like a really strong woman. Like she's like the breadwinner of her family. She had a really great career. Like she used to work at In Style magazine. Like she was one of like the people that like she started working there at like the conception of the magazine. Like she was one of their like whatever first employees.
Okay.
And she's really smart. Like she does like a lot of accounting type or finance work now. But she's just a really interesting woman. She's smart and she's kind and just like so sweet. The way that John portrayed her on the show is like pretty accurate. And when I got home and actually met her or like spoke to her, actually no, this was the first time I met her in person. And there's a scene in the show where he asks me for sex advice, like for Mama Carol. And so I give him sex advice, like for a woman that is allegedly 62 years old and married. And so when I came home and I met her, she was like, you know what? I would have done exactly the same thing. Like, John did great. I would have asked the same thing. I was like, oh my God, Carol.
He did good. That's awesome.
He did good. Yeah, so funny.
Oh, I love that. I love that. The whole relationship. I could totally see it though. I mean, it makes sense. You guys are a whole sitcom.
Yeah. No, we really are. We really are. I'm waiting for the time where Netflix like literally doesn't care what John and I are doing at all. But one day I hope they do.
For you.
I know. I'm like, why is Nick Lachey and Vanessa Lachey hosting Love is Blind? I think John and I could do it better.
So I know just based off some stuff I've heard on your podcast, so you have a relation or a friendship with Lance Bass.
Yes.
Played a role in you getting on the show?
Kind of, not really. So I was during the pandemic, I helped him with all of his social media stuff. So I was like,
how do you just
like I get
friends with Lance Bass?
I know.
Backstreet Boys.
I know. Oh my God. Okay. So, well, he's in sync. Lance Bass is in sync.
I'm so sorry. I almost
the rivals. No, but so basically, one of my friends that I ended up moving in with in LA, she worked in like the music industry. And so she was helping with this tour called the Pop 2K tour, and he was hosting it. So when that tour finished, the two of them had like created a really great friendship. And so she started working with him on his podcast. And so I moved out to LA in March of 2020. So like literally weeks after I moved there, the whole world shut down for the pandemic. And so the job that I had lined up fell through completely, of course, because world shut down. And excuse me, so I needed like a job. And so that's partially how the sex coach thing came about a little later. But at first I was helping Lance with his socials. So like literally I would go to his house most days of the pandemic because their job is a media job. So like they were technically allowed to still go to each other's homes. So I would go with her, and it would be just like me and Lance making like White Claw slushies and sitting in the pool, and my roommate just being like, we have things to record. And Lance and I were like, it's fine. We're going to get to it. It's fine. So that was that. And then his assistant, Lisa, went on season 2 of the show.
Yeah.
So I applied to the show because she applied and she got on and she had such a good experience. But like it had nothing to do with why I actually got on the show. But like I think the association of like, oh, my friend just went on, like I'm just gonna apply and see what happens. And every time I got a call that they wanted to talk to me again, I was like, really? But I think really what did it for me was the sex stuff. Like they just like loved that.
Right. That's really cool. And I mean, I think you were just a whole completely different person than like or character, if that's what you want to call it, than anything that they've brought on before. And you felt real. It wouldn't have made sense for you to come on as a catfish because it just wouldn't have. And I love that. I don't think they've had a character like similar person, contestant, whatever, similar to you since. And I think that that'd be really cool to see more people that like more real and relatable. Because I think that's one of the things that immediately drew me to is that I was like, she's a real person. Like she's so cool. Like I can see us like hanging out and actually talking. Like
that's what we're doing right now, and it's going great.
So I mean, I'm so glad that we got to do this. This was really fun.
Me too.
But like I love the fact that you even took the time to do this with me and have this conversation. Is there anything else that you want people to know about you?
I mean, not necessarily. My favorite color is purple. No, I'm kidding. Not really. I mean, one of the things I think is interesting about doing all of this like social media stuff is obviously people see what they show you. And so behind the scenes, there's always a lot, it's people, you know, we're real people with real lives. There's always a lot more stuff that's happening that we don't always get to talk about. And so the biggest thing for me is that I'm really trying to figure out like my next step in sex education. And so I took a break from posting anything sex education just to like Instagram was really they were blocking everything I posted, and I kept getting like
You have to come up with a coded language.
I kept getting like violations over and over and over and over again. It was annoying. So I took a little time away from it, but I'm getting back into it again. And so follow me on Instagram. It's at ALYSSA LJUB again. And I always appreciate when people send me emails with like information that they want to know or things that I can talk about on the podcast and like anything, because when you are in a space like this all the time, like I forget what people want to know. Not forget, but it's hard for me to understand what people want to know and what they don't know. And so any suggestion or question that you have, send it to me because I genuinely want to know and I genuinely want to tell you and answer those questions for you. And email is easiest because my DMs can sometimes get a little bit all over the place. But if you send me an email, which you could do through my Instagram, then I can create content that you want to see. And that's really important to me. I want to continue to be valuable. Like there's a lot of people who are content creators and influencers who have their place in the world. I think like there are people on these platforms that are meant to like distract and make you feel good and like show you the things that they bought on Amazon. And like, I, by all means, I follow those people,
Mhm.
but I don't think that that's like really my mission in this space. And so it's important to me that I still am continue to be valuable and a resource for people. And so the best way for me to do that is if I know what everyone wants to see.
Exactly. I think
Yeah.
that's so well said.
Thank
And
you.
so, my last question for you, because this is always the center of everything that I do on this platform, mental health is very important to me. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now?
Ooh, I would say a solid 7. Do you hear my dog snoring?
No.
Did you hear? Okay, sorry. She's really loud. I just want to make sure. I would say a solid 7. I
Just explain.
sure. I'm very grateful for like I have a safe and comfortable home and food and all of the life essentials. And there are many people, especially right now, who are not experiencing that right now. So I have a lot of security in that way. And I'm very grateful for that. And I always am like, I think about that a lot. But I also am, I just turned 30 and I'm just like struggling with what's next, like everyone else. And so,
Welcome.
oh gosh, it's crazy. And so, so I think like I'm taken down a few notches because I'm a very meticulous, organized, in control type person. And so it's challenging to be in a space where like I don't have the answer for everything right now. So
Here, take it from someone who's been in the 30 world for last 6 years, 30 gang is quite nice out here. It's nice to be sure of yourself and you'll get there. Uh,
yeah.
every year brings a new source of confidence. And the closer you get to 40, the less time you have to be playing with these people.
Oh,
Like, I don't got time for this.
that's the best part of getting older. Oh my God. It's like I don't care literally at all what anyone else has to say anymore. I just can't. Like I think that there was a time in my 20s where like if I was going to CVS, I was going with makeup on and I there was no way that you
Mhm.
were gonna catch me any other way. Now I'll go with eye crust. I will go in pajamas with eye crust.
Like,
Fight.
I'm going with my buddy slippers. Tell me something.
Exactly.
I dare
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. Like I just can't be bothered anymore. And that's kind of nice.
So, I mean, it's great out here, and it's a great decade, and you're gonna love it. So
Yeah. Thank
thank
you. I
you once
appreciate it.
again for coming on my show. And I'm so glad that we made this connection and had this conversation. Everyone who's listening, go and give Alyssa Lube a follow. And make sure you check out all of her content and her podcast, Alyssa Explains It All. Once again, this has been Joe from Unapologetically Anxious Me, Confessions of a Haitian Girl. Until next time, bye.
Bye.